All right. We back
Yep.
to quantum mechanics, the reality
Mm-hmm.
X. We finna do some more maintenance. Uh a big thing that you put me on to, my guy. You put
What's
me
that?
on to uh this leveraging life lessons, which is
Yeah, yeah.
which is a very, very valuable tool once you expose my brain to it. I say, well, I have been doing it, but I the main thing that comes out of a lot of these conversations is the actual context that we start putting things in, because you
Mm-hmm.
have concepts and then you do them, right. We do these things, but we don't never have like a actual context that we refer to it as ourselves, because I don't need the context because I'm doing it, right. I know what I.
Mm-hmm.
But when, like you said last time, when we go to make an explanation of our experiences, we have to frame it with some reference point. And when you,
Yeah, context. You saying
yeah,
context, but then before that you said concept. So you got to know the context of the concept. So the
right,
concept
right,
itself is a form of guidance.
there it
It's
is,
an umbrella in which things can exist under. That's what the concept is.
right, right.
You know?
And so, like you said, with that, basically, when you brought the concept of leveraging life lessons, once I heard it and I came back and moved around with it, and it started unlocking ideas for me. Then I started contextualizing, leveraging life lessons. So
Mm-hmm.
uh let's go ahead on and crack that, man. And leveraging life lessons, man. Let's do maintenance, man. Go ahead and crack open
Okay.
that toolbox, brother.
So before we get into this version of this concept, there's some things we got to understand. Just hashing out the definitions so we
Right,
can have a baseline.
right,
So looking at the definition of lessons, but really, first of all, I wrote a little something right here next to leverage life's lessons. I put the manual of existence will be broken down into life lessons.
right.
So if the existence itself is what life is, it's a continuous flow,
Uh-huh.
and then within that existence lessons are learned and compiled and actually added to the person that's experiencing those lessons. So let's get into lessons. So a lesson, the definition of it is a section into which a course of study is divided, especially a single continuous session of formal instruction. And I put next to that, that's life. A single continuous session of formal instruction is life.
Right,
Something to be learned or studied, a useful piece of practical wisdom acquired by experience or study, something from which a person learns or should learn, instructive example. And then I got a negative portion of lesson because sometimes people put negative spins on lessons, like, oh, you got to learn your lesson. So the
right,
negative part of that is a reproof or punishment intended to teach one better ways.
right,
And next to that, I put lessons are considered hard because life and nature are hard.
right,
Nature is, they call nature metal because it's unrelenting. It's it's
right,
it's a never-ending cycle. So then going from there, when we look at the word life, life is the sum of distinguishing phenomena of organisms, adaptation to environment. So if nature is constant cycles of, this and this predator eats prey, prey dies, decomposes, gives back to the ecosystem. It forms this whole continuous circle. That's life, right? So when
right,
you're leveraging life's lessons, the main manuscript is existence itself, whether
right,
you're an animal or whatever. And in that existence, you're going to be tested or you're going to come up against things that you have to encounter. Lessons are cyclic, they're cycles,
right,
they have polarities. Lessons can be considered good or bad. Some lessons you can learn once, and some lessons you have to experience multiple times. Um, Life itself is lessons. So lessons are patterns.
mm-hmm,
Patterns are history. History rhymes. History repeats itself. So then I went down because I remember last time we talked, you talked about the three eyes. And I was like, oh, you got me on that one because you
right.
said the three eyes were intuition, imagination. Man, what was the other one, bro?
And intellect,
Intellect, right? And then we categorize those under the auspice of past, present, and future.
right, right,
So if we're looking at leveraging life's lessons, and if lessons are patterns, you can encounter lessons multiple times in a lifetime, or you can encounter a lesson once in a lifetime, or
mm,
it could take you lifetimes of reincarnations to be prepared for this one lesson. But
Right.
nevertheless, if history rhymes and repeats itself, then history can be considered the future. And then I had to look up what history was. History, another word for history, is narration.
Okay.
So narration is also a form of predicting or telling of a story, and that is all categorized under future, right? Narration is a form of control. It's also used as a tool. And I put next to that media who controls your narrative, because that's a part of predicting your future. History is future. So then I was like, if history is future, then what is the past? Past is documentation of that. So past can be considered science and religion. Two different excerpts. These are documentations of what has transpired.
Right.
So if history is the future and the past is science, what is the present? The present is math. The present is the calculations that are being undergone as we're going through the life itself, and patterns are repeated. So if math is the present, then the present and math are chaos.
Right.
Because math is chaos, because math can be disputed, and you can prove your work with math. Math isn't a philosophy, right? Math is something that can be finite and identified. So therefore it's chaos, because it could potentially be solved in many ways.
Right.
And then I was like, well, what is the opposite of math? If math is the present, what is the opposite of math? And I was surprised to find that an antonym for math is truth and certainty. And I'm like, how is math something so precise? The antonym for math, or the opposite for math, is truth and certainty, because math can be perceived and challenged.
Right.
When you're certain of something, it can't really be challenged. If that's the law, then it's the law. Either you following it or you're not. So there's no room, just like we talked about heroes and villains, there's no room for any other distinguishing factors.
Okay.
You know?
So look, let me put this right here at that point, right there, right?
Okay.
So when you say what math is, right? So when you say it in this context for what we're talking about, math is chaos, but using math as the tool that it is, it's the organizing of your presence. It's organizing the present, because like you said, it could be, and you'll say, well, how, right? Well, right now we say, well, we can have a meeting at 3:00. So before 3 and after 3, you organize your day to meet at 3:00. That's
right.
You did a mathematical computation. You did a mathematical equation, right?
And it's chaos because you could do it a bunch of different ways.
Right. You could, right? You say, I'm gonna eat breakfast, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna do this. But at 3:00, right, I got to get on the freeway. I got to do this. It's gonna take me 30 minutes because it'd be traffic at 2. You do all these computations to be where you need to be to equate this, to solve this equation at 3:00.
How do you map that?
Right. Okay. Okay, go
how
ahead.
How do you map that? The map is the lessons that you've learned up until this point. You understand how life flows, because there's a lot of ways to get to the answer. You can add, you can multiply, you can subtract. All those different ways will get you to the answer.
Right. So that's what you're saying. So now I'm saying, well, I can't go down this highway because at this time it's usually traffic jam, right? It sounds well, that's not math, but it is math, because it's math being played out. Because if you get on this highway, it's going to take you 45 minutes. You don't have to say 45 minutes, but you know that getting on this at 2:00 is 45 minutes to an hour.
Right, exactly.
Right. So that's the variable that you replaced it for the equation for you to get somewhere at 3:00.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Or if I go here and I do this, if I stop by whoever and get a sandwich or whatever, that's gonna take me X amount. Then I got to get on the freeway. Then I got to do this. You don't say the numbers. You say all of the You say all, like when they do those when you do those algebraic expressions, you do y plus 2xz, right? But that's what that is. That's what you're doing at that point. You're saying y is the sandwich shop. This is the 2xz is the freeway. You get what I'm saying? And so you saying your equation to be solved is to be wherever at 3:00.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And you, like I said, you can solve the equation many ways. You can add each individual point up, or you can multiply them.
Right.
You're still going to get the same answer. That's why math would be considered chaos,
right.
because there's many ways to get to the point that you need to be to.
There you go.
And just to put that in another context, because we're talking about context,
right.
What about longer equations? So I was like, lessons can be like orbits of planets. Okay. Dig this. It could take lifetimes for certain lessons to line up for you to be there privy and to witness that lesson. So it's kind of like these long drawn out orbits, continuous cycles of lessons, right? So if life rotates constantly like that, then for the lesson would be value. So you're going to exchange value for value in those moments when you learn these lessons. So you might sacrifice getting there on time, but you learn that this was the wrong street to go down. Right. Whenever it's 2 o'clock. So you're trading value for value. What is value? Your value is your time. Value is what you're paying attention to. Value is what's relevant to you in exchange for something else that's relevant to you.
Right.
And it could take a long time for certain shit to line up. It could take a whole lifetime for you to be in the right place at the right time. It could take a lifetime of you making these decisions based on the lessons that you've learned to put you at a certain place when you're 62 or whatever. These are very long equations,
like
but
now,
nevertheless, their agreement, you agreed to take on this equation.
Now, when you say that, now you're doing your as above, so below, your macroscopic and your microscopic context, right? Because over your life, you're saying, you know what I mean? Okay, so you do it in school. You say by the time you 18, you should have a diploma. By the time you 24, you should have your college degree. By the time you're 30, you should be at your job this long. By the time you understand? So
that's history repeating itself.
Right.
You know what I mean? Those are social constructs. Those are all agreements that we as a society agree on.
But like you say, you're saying that's social math. That's social.
Right. Okay.
You get what I'm saying? That's the social chaos. That's you organizing the social chaos through a mathematical expression. You see what I'm saying? By the time I get to this age, I should be this, I'll be that, right? Right.
Through the process of learning lessons, understanding that, lessons are learned, and some people don't put value. Some lessons are just, they come along and you pick them up and they become a part of your psyche. They become a part of who you are. They become pathologies, things that you're destined to do because they're lessons that you learn. Some lessons you learn over and over, and some, you might not never learn in this lifetime.
Right.
So I put right here, you have to see the benefit in all lessons, because everything is lessons. Lessons are life. Life is continuous flow. So everything is a lesson. So you have to see the benefit from all lessons, even if it's going to be considered negative. Okay. You know what I mean? It has to be, these are like social constructs that we come up to say, all right, well, this is a bad thing to have happen. But why is it bad? Can this person not learn from this? Like rehabilitation or a better understanding of a concept. When you look at the negative definition of lessons, it's reproof or punishment intended to teach one better ways, because it's going to make things better for you when you participate in this social construct that doesn't deviate you from common sense. Right. A lot of people have these, what is it? It's philosophical skepticism. Okay. And that's what a lot of society is going through right now, because there's too much skepticism into what's real and what's not. And philosophical skepticism, the thing about that, it'll take you away from things that would be normally considered common sense. Look, understanding that a man is a man and a woman is a woman.
Look, let me say this, because this is something I noticed, man, because I did it. I did it for a long time. You become really, 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 really anti-establishment. And when I say that, I'm not talking governments and all of this. I'm talking like anti-organization, anti-personal organization, anti-personal structure. A lot of, I don't know if I'll say our generation or, the people of my age group or peer group, right? We came up, and maybe our parents or our parental units, or however you want to talk about that situation, the adults around us may have been doing whatever, right? So when we became adults, we got to the point to where we was like, well, we not doing that. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing
Break the chains. We broke the chains or the cycles.
Right. But what I'm saying is the cycles of things that we needed. We took it all. We want to take it all down. We see it all as the establishment. So you'll see the basic structures that you need to exist. Those like you said, those life lessons that we need. Where nobody wants to be on time. Nobody wants to go here. Nobody wants to do their job. Nobody wants to. So all of these things that are needed for personal, we've become so anti all of this stuff.
Well, those social contracts are being broken.
I'm taking away, it's taking away my life. It's taking away this, but then you still want the money, or you still want the lifestyle, or you still want what comes from the other side of this particular institution, of this institution, this particular structure. Maybe
you prefer the conditions over the ignitions.
Right.
The ignitions are what bring on the conditions, but the conditions are what keep the fire burning.
Right.
So some people get enamored with, like we was talking about, results versus tools.
Right.
There's a difference between the condition you in that perpetuates what's going on, and then the ignition of that. Like, you can have a lot of great ideas, but don't follow through on none of them.
Right.
You got a lot of ignition, but the engine ain't turning over.
Right.
You got to have fuel to keep that engine going.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, in our age group, or just around us, are older and younger in that group, it's become people that because their parents made them get up at a certain time and go to school, and go to bed at a certain time. They don't do it. We don't do it no more. We don't teach it to our children. We don't do it. Right. So now you got, when you go to workplaces and you at the job, you got people, it's like, oh, I'm late. It's not that big. It's not this. It's not that. And it just becomes this whole situation where it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. You're a human being. I get it. Right. But at the end of the day, these things are needed for us to function. People are like, oh, well, that's the man holding you down. Well, okay, that could be. You're right. But even if it wasn't, and you owned a farm, you would have to get up at the crack of dawn to go get the eggs before the cats or whatever get in there, or you'd have to get up to water the garden, or you'd have to still have some structure of function.
That's the guidance of these life lessons, because life tells you that, hey, if you don't get up, if the early bird don't get up and catch the worm, somebody else gonna get you. So you have to file that away as a knowing.
So, look, like, just like you're saying, right? Because I just got to use this example before it gets out of my brain, because I got to say it. So you'll be like, oh, I got to wake up by an alarm. That thing is, all these, and then you get all of this super duper consciousness, or this super duper awareness that people have, wokeisms and all type of things or whatever. And I'm not against it. I'm just saying that, the alarm will wake you up, man, mess up your cycle. But the rooster used to do the exact same thing. The rooster used to be the farmer's alarm clock.
Right. On a natural level.
Right. So these things were still in place. It was still
everything artificial comes from something natural.
Right.
It comes from the design of nature. There's nothing in existence that we know of that did not come from nature.
Right. And I'm just
saying, the concept or the actual material, everything comes from the earth.
And that's
everything comes from the dirt.
Right. And so now, even though the society is the way it is, we just become so anti these things. But these are the things that you need. Like you say,
we're rebelling against these lessons. We're rebelling against these lessons that life is trying to teach us.
Right.
Lessons are listen at this. Lessons are relative to a person's perspective.
Right.
That's it. You accumulate lessons like gold or silver or any other type of currency because they're valuable.
Right.
Then you can take those lessons that you have put value in, and you can leverage those lessons, bro.
Right.
You leverage those lessons to your advantage to fit the scenario and force force things to work in your favor. I mean, that's what
Right.
leverage
Look,
is. You
that's
use.
what I'm about to say. Let me grab that
Go
spot.
there, go with it.
Let me grab that. So just like you saying, so when you a kid or you young or you this, getting up at a certain time meant a lot to you. But by the time you 25, 30, it should only be a tool that you dig into your bag and use. It shouldn't mean the same thing it meant to you at 10.
Right.
But
Right.
you carrying the same feeling, you carrying the same angst against it 30 years later, 20 years later. You
Right.
understand what I'm saying? Like at this point, this should be something that you using to, like you just said, to insulate your existence. Like
Right.
this is
Exactly. It should be a filtration system, but
right.
every lesson that you learn is not life ending or life altering. It's just, well, it's just a form of way for you to deal with the life that's presented. And again, it
Right.
goes back to those social constructs.
Right.
As communities from early on, we all agree to this same shit in a way, you know,
Right.
in an ever so subtle way, because we're all human. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We
Right.
all have the same needs at the very core.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then lessons, I put right here, lessons can often be skills you already are born with, aka a birthright that has to become a knowing. You're born with certain things, and as you go through life, you realize these things. And sometimes it takes one realization or it takes multiple realizations, but at some point, you're gonna know that this is who you are. You know,
Right.
adversity helps you know who you are. When you're tried and you're tested and you come out of it, you're toughened up by it. You know who you are and where you're coming from into the next lesson that you're going to learn or into the next encounter, because life is continuous. We're leveraging life's lessons. Life is a continuous subject matter that you're constantly bombarded with every day you open your eyes.
Right.
Right. So then I had to delve into because I was saying that's why people suffer, because the lessons are skills that you attain by trading your suffering for the knowledge and skills, and how you use it is how you use it. Some people can bump their head 1,000,000 times in their life and never get it. And just
Okay,
never
look,
get it.
let me hold you right there. So just like you saying, that's just what we said. Okay, learning to get up on time becomes a skill at some point. You shouldn't be fighting with this for the rest of your life. At some point, this should be something you can use, you could turn on and turn. At this time, it should be put into your tool bag.
Exactly.
Like,
I had to look up what learn was.
Yeah.
I
Like
had
you
to look
said.
up what learn was.
So
So the
all these
definition
things
of
we
learn,
learn, they become skills, they become tools, they become things for you to use to your advantage.
exactly. Look at the definition of learn: to gain knowledge or skill through study, instruction, or experience, to become aware or informed, or to discover, to mix mind of memory, to mix the mind or memory to memorize. So that's when you're mixing in all that and you remember something. That's what the definition of learning is.
Right.
So then if you like we saying, if you accumulate lessons like a tool bag or a bag of gems, you know, you'd be dropping jewels or whatever, you know, that if you could mirror that to the stock market, how we say everything comes from nature. So if we're leveraging life's lessons, that's another form of the stock market or economic life cycles,
Right.
because everything falls on cycles. You're
Right.
going to be presented with similar things from different angles. That's why concepts are the umbrella and context tells us how we should protect ourselves. That's what lessons are. They're a form of filtration. They're a filtration system. They're like a if you were a cell, it's a permeable membrane that, based on the right combination of things, you would allow to pass through or out of your circumference. The things that's relevant to you, what you worried about. It's a filtration system.
Right.
It's a form of knowing what's not right. It's triage.
Right.
It's prioritizing your life based on experiences or experiences that you were able to ascertain from others. Wise is the man that reads the book that another man suffered 10 years to write, because the person that suffered 10 years to write that book has already done the work. You're the wise one to go in advance of that, to read that information and apply it to your life expeditiously.
Right.
That's why Bruce Lee used to love watching videos, because he said videos are the new books, because now I can quickly not only hear and see, but I can mimic. He's
Right.
utilizing more of his senses. Mimicry is it's a very critical sense, and it's a very easily overtaken sense too, in the fact that we all want to do it, and we're all, predictively programmed to do it.
Right. Right.
So lessons lenses are lenses that we can use to put over what we're viewing.
Right.
So I put lessons are lenses as far as like application. Then I brought up the predator, and I was like, the predator, whenever he was presented with something that he wasn't too certain of, he had a few different lenses that he could change to in order to see his environment better and to realize how to interact with his environment better. So if lessons can be perceived as lenses or even maps. So when I went into that portion of it, I was like, maps or fractals, an infinitely zoomable lens in which you can look at life through. And this will allow you, based on what your needs are at that time, this will allow you to maneuver through life easily, because you can change the aperture of the lens that you're viewing it through from the lessons that you've learned.
Right. Right.
Right. How do we know what we know? How do we improve? How do we get better? How do we learn from our life's mistakes? It's knowing what's not right. It's having that judgment, that practical wisdom.
Right.
That's what all this forms back into, a practical wisdom. Practicality is something that makes sense.
Right.
It's not going to take you out of your element. It's just practical. If you have something that's too heavy to lift, why not grab a stick that's next to you and use that stick as leverage?
Right.
But you have to learn these lessons. And
Right.
the sacrifice of learning lessons is where you lose the attention, or you might lose confidence. But then you have to realize that you've learned that through the knowing. It has to be documented some type of way. You have to have maybe not a traumatic experience, but trauma doesn't have to be negative. It has
Right.
to be documented some type of way. That's what junk DNA is.
Right.
Really,
Right.
these are documentations of emotional constructs, and DNA is a very complex structure.
Right.
What resides in that? Well, it's speculated that it could be anything. It could be your emotions of the time. It could be your grandparents' emotions of the time. It's a very unknown realm, right? It's unknown. How
Right.
can you know something that you don't know? You have to experience it. You have to become aware of it.
Right.
Lessons
So-
allow you to become aware of things that you wouldn't normally be aware of. There's
Right.
functions in the body.
Well, I was about to say, when you saying that junk DNA, so now we go macro micro again, right? When we say junk DNA, so we looking at quote unquote space, which is as above, so below, right? So we're looking at the macro, which is above us, and they say that what is it? 85% of 85 is what we can see.
Dark matter,
Right,
dark energy,
right.
and then the physical realm.
Right. So now you're saying it's the same type of numbers when you're talking your junk DNA. We only know maybe 15% of what the DNA is, but 85% of it is undefined, right?
Look about the senses. Let's do the
Right.
senses like we do dark matter, dark
Right.
energy, and the
Right.
physical realm.
That's
The
exactly
physical
what I'm
realm is
doing
measured
right
by
now.
the 5 known senses.
Right.
And then if you're going to delve into the dark matter that is within you, there's a whole nother array of senses that are tied to that.
Right.
So if it's as above, so below, if the universe is as above us, it's considered the universe. Universe means one song. If it's ever expanding infinitely, right, then that's one aspect. If you go so below, if you were in the heavens and the underworld was the earth, then that would be the physical realm. So the underworld, if you're on the earth, is not underneath the earth. If you're on the earth and you're talking about the underworld, underneath the earth is still physical. So the underworld would be something ever expanding as the universe is.
Right.
What's ever expanding as the universe is here on earth, the internal man. If you're looking at fractals or magnifying something infinitely, then you can do that with the human body.
Exactly.
You can take one of my cells and magnify it infinitely, as if you were taking a Hubble telescope and looking out into space and magnifying it infinitely. And you're saying, oh, space goes on forever. But Stephen Hawking said that no, space does not go on forever. Space has a finite stopping point. That's the size of a pin. What is that? That's the internal part of man.
Right.
If I can ever expand out into space, I can ever expand into inner space.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So when you're saying the junk DNA, right? That's the unknown, or black matter
The
that's
dark
out in
matter, the
space, the
unknown.
dark
That's
matter that's out in space is all of these processes that has happened. That's caused what the known part of
right.
space, right? So inside you, your junk DNA is the all of the
That is the learned.
right.
The junk DNA is the
Is
learned, because what is
all of
learned?
the
The definition of
processes that
learned.
have happened, and the DNA that we can see is what's known. But
Right, because
all of the
learn,
processes that have already happened is the junk DNA.
listen what learn's definition, one of the definitions
Right.
for learn is memorize.
Right.
How does the body, a super complex, supramolecular structure, how does it document its work? Everything must document its work. You know how you always say stand by your work?
Right.
That's a form of documentation, bro.
Right.
That's a forensic form of documentation.
Right.
So
right.
If the human body is a complex structure and it lives on forever, if we got the same DNA at the core of us from the first man and woman from 66 trillion years ago, if that's still in us, then from that first piece of paperwork, we've been documenting our work, standing by our work for eons.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So that is what that junk DNA is. It's a documentation of all the lessons learned in an accumulation. But how can I tap into that? How can I tap into this?
Well, here's what I'm about to say. So
okay.
what we know is what shows up in the helix. What we know, right? So now we leverage what we know, right? Which is our intellect, right? And so our junk DNA is our imagination, things that we believe are things that we see, right? So then what we know and what we believe, we put together, right? Let's do it again with our intuition is what we can see are the processes that we put in place. So intuition within this structure is leveraging your life lessons because it's putting you in a position to do the unknown.
Okay.
Right? You're using what you know and position it against what you don't know, right? To do the unknown. Right. So
it's a genetic auspice, a guidance. It's a genetic predisposed guideline.
Right.
A subtle quantum guideline. That's quantum level.
Right. Because that's what I'm saying. Because if I'm being consistent in my life or being consistent in something, I can't know that you can't possibly know for a fact that if you follow these rules or you do this, that at this certain age, you're going to have these things, right? But you base it on what? You base it on the history, the statistics of these things. You base it on all the information that you have, the intellect that you have gathered. And then so now you start putting in processes and procedures, which is then leveraging the lessons that you've already learned. So you say, okay, so if I get up at 5, I go here and do this. If I do this for 10 years and I save this money and I do this and I do that, because now you're managing all these little lessons. Well, if I stop doing this, then I can save more money. And if I do this, then I can do this. But if I go get credit and then I do this, then I'll have more credit power. So in 5 months or 6 months or a year, I can make this purchase. And if I make enough of these purchases, but I have to stay consistent on my regular living, I have to stay consistent on my disciplines, I have to stay consistent on these things. And by the time I'm this age, I could do blah, 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 blah. Right. So like you said, based on that, that's how you create that bridge that'll get you from here to there. You make the fulcrum, right, which is the present is the fulcrum, right? And the past is your where you are, right, with your intellect. So now you're trying to get to the other end of this are you trying to pull this future up? Right, you're trying to manifest it. So that arm on the other end of the seesaw, or whatever you want to call it, the balance scale, you're trying to pull that up. So what do? You weigh this side down with your lessons, right? You lay this side down with your intellect. You leverage this side down with all of your information. Your fulcrum is your intuition, right? And then you manifest or you bring up that future that you're looking for. that
Some
imagination.
gotta propel you. Some gotta be the
Right,
force in which you do it.
right, right,
When you
right,
was just talking
right,
about waking up early and people's frustration with that, I just put right here, lessons are perpetual,
right,
right? They don't stop. Just like we were saying, life
right,
is perpetual and continuous. Lessons are that as well, because
right,
the seasons are going to change and things are going
right,
to keep coming at you. So in that same vein, we could say these lessons or wear patterns, right? This is like, it's like walking the same path to the store, and after a while the whole neighborhood walks this path. Now there's a wear that gets
right,
you to the store the fastest way. From different minds, this wear pattern was constructed, you know what I mean?
right, right,
That's again those, that comes back again to those social constructs, and then those confirmation biases. Remember we were talking about yesterday how
right,
you can only look up something from the version of which you know it.
right,
So all it does is confirm the bias that you might have. Because when I look up things, I look it up in the Webster's, but then I also look it up in Wikipedia, and I also look it up in all these other variable forms, because there's going to be added definitions and subtracted definitions and different interpretations of it. It's sad, but it's also beneficial, because it'll allow you to perceive it from the angles in which you could come to your own conclusion, right?
right,
And that's the most important part, because people don't know how to draw their own conclusions because they don't know how to think critically. They haven't studied the epistemology of knowing what you know initially and basically. So I just wrote that down. I thought that was interesting. um all the lessons you learn, they're not going to change your life. They're going to become a part of your life, and they need to be used, like we've been saying, as tools, because people will punish themselves to teach themselves lessons. Is that punishment, or is that a form of discipline? Is that a form of self hypnosis, where you're
right,
introducing these different things to your life that end up becoming life hacks? You know what you're gonna do and what you're not gonna do. This is where you put yourself through adversity, or somebody else puts you through adversity, and then you realize who you are and what you're made of and how you deal with the pressures. And you know what you're gonna do and what you're not gonna do in certain situations, and that adds to your self-confidence. That adds to the lenses in which you can perceive life and all the ways you can apply it. So I put right here, in that, you can overthink things. You can interfere with your own ability to use the leverage that you've attained by overthinking these lessons that you've learned and overthinking the application of these lessons. Sometimes you just got to jump out there. And I find myself doing that sometimes too, because I've become overly analytical. And when you're overly analytical about things, you tend to be hesitant. So you can over leverage, just like in the stock market. You can over leverage these life lessons and end up bankrupting yourself
right,
because of that.
right,
So I think that in the application of this term, in the application of this concept of leveraging life's lessons, those are different things you have to consider. Mm, I put inevitable aspects of alternating currents. So a lesson is a current or a flow. It has a beginning and it has an end. And by the end, you should maybe have learned something. So if
right,
things have alternating currents or flows, then they have polarities, right?
right,
Polarities cause rotation, and rotation causes cycles. And that's something to be understood in there, because life is lessons and lessons are patterns. So understanding patterns is understanding life. And when you understand those patterns to enough, you can become a super trader.
right,
Again, I'm bringing it back to this economic type of template, because that's what these people are doing. They're realizing patterns and trends. It's always important to understand what the trends are, because when you look at trends from the aspect of an investor and not somebody who's chasing the trend, if you look at trends from the aspect of an investor, then you're taking all those lessons that you learned and you're watching the new wave of this trend as it crests over, and you're going to see, how can I use my tools to help increase my position?
right,
Always when you're trying to get ahead in life and you're trying to be wealthy, you have to, look at life like you're purchasing tools to do the job to move forward, not as, like you say, man, a result. I thought that's crucial, to look at things as whether they're tools or the end result of something. You should never
right,
be satisfied, because when you're satisfied, then the lessons are going to keep coming, and you won't see the value in all the lessons, because you're not exchanging the same amount of attention to the
right,
lesson.
right,
You have to, it has to be value for value.
right,
So you might not hit your head as hard as you have before in the past, but you have to still exchange that value for value, that suffrage. Because
Right.
through the suffering, you know who you are. And these lessons, even though they have negative connotations, they're so beneficial.
Right.
Because look at what they show you. It's science, it's forensically analyzing your life. You're going back to the crime scene. Even though there was a crime committed there, we can learn from this. We can learn from this to where there's not another crime committed here in the same manner. It's going to have to be done differently. And
Right.
when it's done differently, we're going to come right back to the same spot and we're going to solve it again. And we're going to file that away. It has to be done differently. And this is a perpetual thing. And that's what they say, you know, with karma, and you get reincarnated because you came down here to learn something. It goes back to those agreements and making agreements. And, you know, I think agreements, no matter how subtle, they can end up being eternal agreements because we use words that we do not understand. So
Right.
you enter into these agreements, and that's kind of like what we was talking about with the social concepts, like the social contracts that we have as people.
Mhm.
And just like with the pandemic and all that other stuff, man, when they pulled the plug on that, man, people were helpless.
Right.
And I heard this dude, Gregory Manarino, he said learn helplessness in the beginning of the pandemic. And I was like, what the fuck? I heard that phrase before, but I only realized that I heard it before once I read the definition.
Right.
So when it looks at it says learn helplessness, behavior exhibited by a subject after enduring repeated aversive stimuli, and I put in parentheses fear, beyond their control. It was initially thought to be caused by the subject's acceptance of their powerlessness. And then I put next to that, improvisation is empowerment.
Right.
Discontinuing attempts to escape or avoid the adverse stimulus, even when alternatives are presented. So just to go back over that, in summary, learned helplessness is thinking that you're powerless in a situation, even though you're presented with alternatives to get you out of the situation. You're so fearful and, you know, hesitant to do what you need to do because you're not leveraging your life's lessons. You've learned other lessons that
Right.
you end up being subject to whatever tyranny comes down on you. So everybody's still wearing masks. Everybody's still hesitant to go back to work. It really sent a devastating ripple through everything because it shattered everyone's lessons that they learned from this social contract. We all said that, hey, if we get up, we do this, we do that, then everything is going to flow.
Right.
Somebody
Right.
interrupted that whole flow, and now
Right.
everyone is frozen in time, helpless because they're not leveraging their life's lessons no more. Because
Right.
when they were leveraging them, shit was working, and
Right.
now they still leveraging them the same way, and it's just not working.
Look, right there with that, right? So it's like during all this stuff, even right now, even to this day, to right now, as things is changing as we speak. So if you being an entrepreneur or you being anything, it doesn't matter. When you're having good times, everybody is doing this, doing this, doing this. So you take lessons like, okay, well, let's just say you got a workout program. And you're like, well, you'll never be on a magazine or you'll never be a top-notch athlete. Okay, cool. But you learn the things about working out, drinking, eating right, being consistent in that, right? So to be you're not going to be a bodybuilder, right? But you learn things about bodybuilding, right? Because I'm about to show you leveraging, right? So
Right.
so then you say, okay, well, and I read books, right? So I take time to read books, and it's something that I enjoy. People say, well, that takes a lot of time. Well, that's why I do it. It takes a lot of time, right? So then now you get out here and you got different jobs and you're doing different things. So I got this business, or I got to go to work, or however you live in your life, right? So you got to go to work, but let's say your job's paying you good. It's paying you good. So now, even if you're an entrepreneur, you work for somebody, do economic times, it's going to go up and down. So, inflation and different things. So in between hustles, or in between the good times and the bad times, what do? You work out and you read books. Well, you say, well, what does that mean? So, okay, I leverage these life lessons. So I do it because it keeps me from overindulging in things that would cause me to do other things, right? Because those things would add weakness to my character or myself, because I'm trying to maintain a consistency at all times, whether the time is good or the time is bad. So now you take the lessons or the things that you learn, like I said, working out or reading or just getting hobbies and things of that nature that you can do all the time. So you put those in between. So if you stay consistent on those, and I say that to say, that keeps me from drinking all the time. That keeps me from, maybe partaking in drugs, because I in my mind, I'm like, well, I'm trying to lose 10 pounds or I'm trying to gain 10 pounds. Well, for me to do those things, I have to stay on some sort of program. Right? I have to stay on some sort of consistency. I don't have to do it, but I choose to do it. So in the meantime, in between the good times or the highs of the money and the lows of the money, or the highs of life and the lows of life, I stay consistent because I always put a plan in place for something. Whether I achieve those things or not, or, oh, well, you ain't never going to be on a magazine, or you ain't never going to make it to the NFL, or you ain't never going to be in the NBA, whether or not, okay, well, maybe I just want to get better at basketball in general. So I can't drink every Friday because Saturday I wake up and go run games at the gym. Or I can't because Sunday I go play flag football. Or, you know what I'm saying? For whatever you do, whatever you choose to put in between these things keeps you consistent. So your money doesn't fluctuate. You see what I'm saying? Your habits don't fluctuate. You stay consistent. So when because the times are going to go up and down, they're going to epoch, right? Or not epoch, what do they call it? Ebb and flow, right? The times are going to go up and down. They're going to go on that wave. But you have to use these life lessons or things that you learn to stay balanced. So as it goes up and down across that little, you are the balance line in the middle, right?
So I thought you was gonna go, when you said leverage life lessons, I thought you was gonna be like on a man of many hats, which is still kind of in line with that.
This is what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's not that you're gonna be a bodybuilder.
Right, but you can use that the same discipline you got, or the same leveraging of the lessons that it takes to become a bodybuilder. You can be like, well, I can show that same patience or that same determination. And it's not lifting a barbell; it's maybe getting to work on time. The same. That's what I thought you meant. That's just basically what you're saying.
Yeah. So you're using these different things in between the ebb and flow of life, because that you can't control. That's going to do it itself. It's going to go up and down. It's going to go up and down. But how do you remain consistent across the middle so you can remain unfazed? So you leverage the lessons that you learn. You leverage.
A lot of successful people have hobbies and things that they're into that really keep them, I guess you could say, grounded. And they are successful in life because they aren't defined by their successes. They enjoy things in life.
This is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. So in between, you go run at the gym, you go to the gym, you're not trying to make it to the NFL. You're not trying to make it to the NBA. You're not trying to be this world-class artist. But the things that come with those things keep you grounded, right? So if you're trying to work out, you're trying to gain weight or lose weight, you can't drink all the time. So people be like, why you ain't drinking? You're like, well, I'm trying to gain 10 pounds. I'm trying to lose 10 pounds.
That's that value for value when you're learning lessons. You got to sacrifice, I want to drink, but you got to say, I'm going to trade the value of drinking for me for the value of me being able to lose this weight. It's value for value.
But what I'm saying is the weight gain or loss is not as important as the fact that keeps you consistent within the ebb and flow of life. You see what I'm saying? It keeps you're keeping your discipline. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that maybe you're not even really trying to lose the 10 pounds, but it keeps you focused.
It's a byproduct. It's a certain amount of, it's a byproduct of you being that person. If I'm it's just like if you hang around, I'm gonna hang around some money because I'm trying to get me some.
I
want to do what the smartest person in the room is doing.
I'm keeping my own little agenda. You get what I'm saying? I'm keeping my own little agenda. It doesn't, whether I succeed or fail at these little things doesn't matter. It's just me keeping at them because I'm staying steady on my bigger task, right? Which is to remain consistent in my life.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Because you see what I'm saying? Because you're never going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, you're never going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're never going to be Mr. Olympia 15 times in a fucking row, right? But
Right.
if you using these things, you watching videos, and then well, hey man, look, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get my pull-ups together. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that means man, I've been drinking a little bit. Let me cut back on the drinking so I can
Mm-hmm.
do another set Monday. So you get what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that
Mm-hmm.
you automatically gonna be this calisthenic superstar, but you once you see your 5 or 6, you like, okay, cool. Now that keeps you from drinking and doing things that may cost you more money, just spending more money buying more beer, spending more money
Yeah.
buying more cigarettes, spending more money going out to the restaurant. You see what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm.
now you staying consistent on just in your life. Just you got a flat line that you living in your life. You get what I'm saying? So
And you transmuting a lot of energy.
right.
You
So the
performing
ebb and
alchemy on
flow,
all this other stuff that you
right,
blocking out. You got to block out.
right,
Oh, that's bullshit. That's bullshit.
right,
I'm gonna turn
right,
that into this. I'm gonna
right,
call it. That's
right.
that alchemy.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So as life is ebb and flowing, right? As
Mm-hmm.
the stock market is going up and down, your life is consistent. So now you're seeing a little extra money in your
You
bank account.
hedging your bets.
Right. You're seeing a little extra money in your bank account. You're seeing a little, you get what I'm saying?
But you're not losing. The main thing is you're
Right,
not losing.
right. So you got a
You
little
might not be
extra,
gaining as much, but you ain't took a
right.
loss. That's
You're
real
not
wealth.
taking as many. Right, right.
Richness
Right.
versus wealth.
Right. So in your time, your body's working a little bit better. So you waking up a couple minutes extra early in the morning. So now what you done started adding stretching to your day. You done started you get what I'm saying? Like, so now it's becoming
Leveraging them lessons, man.
you bagging what I'm raking.
Yeah, man.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm gonna say it like you said it last time. You was like these is what you saying, it was mental poverty. Or you were saying what were you was calling it
Imagination poverty. You have
yeah, yeah.
impoverished your imagination.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
like I say before, and I'm gonna say it again, I don't fight crime, I fight poverty.
Right.
You see what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
And whatever version it is, I fight poverty, man.
yeah.
You
Mm-hmm.
understand what I'm saying? So if I see mental impoverishment, I got to fight that. If I see
Right.
spiritual poverty, I got to fight that. If I see,
Mm-hmm.
you understand me? So I'm taking my life lessons and I'm arming myself. You see what I'm saying? So like you
Yeah.
said, if there's, like they say, this is mental, physical, and spiritual warfare being raised out here, man. And if
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, wisdom, understanding, science, and math are your tools, why do you choose not to arm yourself?
Right, right. You got to look at things through the proper lenses.
Right.
Lenses are
The
lessons.
lessons, right.
Mm-hmm.
And the lessons are our filtration system for us to see these opportunities for improvement, brother. Right on.
Right,
But
right.
I just had to drop that real quick because you was there with it. You understand me?
Yeah, that's definitely igniting the flame, man. That's a flame igniter right there. So we're going
Right.
from ignition to conditions. So
Yeah,
now that you've
man.
ignited the flame, I have to provide the right conditions for that flame to flourish.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and then
Right.
the more that flame flourishes, the more internal illumination that I'm gonna have.
Right.
That's a definite powerful form of meditation when you can imagine a fire burning within you, right? And
Uh-huh.
then that fire illuminates what is in you, and you can, when you illuminate something and you shine light on something, now you can know what it is. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
you ignite that fire through these concepts, and then you provide the right conditions for that fire to burn brightly, and then you're shining and casting through the film that is your DNA. Now you know what it is. Now you have a knowing, because this internal fire is burning and illuminating all that is within you. Know thyself, and then you can show and prove,
Right.
and you can go to the next place that you need to be. Just speaking
Right.
philosophically,
Right.
or
Right. Right.
metaphorically rather.
Right.
You know.
That's exactly
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do.
Yeah, because all potential sources of knowledge, if we're going to say that everything that we understand that man has constructed comes from nature, then all potential sources of knowledge are going to come from within you.
Right.
Going to come
Right.
from within the elements that make you up. All potential sources of knowledge. Because if the universe is as above, so below, and it's so vast, and there's
Look,
star nebulas,
right.
and Mhm.
Look. So now when you say it like that, you like you say, you just spark the fire. You just stroke the flame, right? When you say
Mhm.
that now, so then that means what is that junk DNA? That's that is the library. That is where
You
all
need to illuminate it. How you gonna read your books?
right. Right. That's where
Mhm.
all of this is stored. So if you taking what you know and then you start working on the imagination of things that you believe, and then you start working on these patterns, you start leveraging these life lessons to keep you consistent in just living it and developing. Now you start illuminating all of this whole library of information.
Right, exactly. And
Right,
that goes back to all the symbolic representations that we didn't had of it. Like when Neo
right,
and Trinity, they said that they needed guns and they racked up all those guns. But then Bobby described it as those guns came in on bookshelves.
right,
So when it was in their own mind, they was like, we're gonna need guns. And they came with all the guns. The guns was really the book sales or documentation,
right,
forensic
right,
documentation. That's what your
right,
DNA is. It's
right,
forensic documentation. If the body is so uh uh chaotic and it has hormones and chemicals and smells, if you can cut a person open, you're gonna get all type of smells and colors and
right,
gaseous, all type of stuff. That's a
right,
world that we don't understand. So
right.
if it's full of all this vastness and unknownness, then to bring it into a light, I kind of lost that. I lost that where I was going with it because I was trying to describe that basically. But really, in a nutshell, it's forms of meditation that you can use in vividly imagining lighting up your internal world as if it was the universe itself.
Right.
Because the
That's
memories,
exactly
oh
what
yeah, this is where I
you're
was going with. This is where I was going with. If your body's made up of all this crazy complex stuff, how can
doing.
it remember something? How can it store it away if you got oils and fats and smells and all these things? It has to be put away in such a format that it encompasses all of these things. How can you save a feeling? How can you save a chemical combination of things? It's through
Right,
the strands of DNA.
right,
And then to
right,
know that you have that, you have to have this internal fire that illuminates that for you
right,
through a knowing. And the only way you're going to know yourself is when you go through experiences and you learn these life lessons and you bump your head and you exchange value for value. And then you realize that that was in me the whole time. I just needed to see it. I just needed to
mm-hmm,
shine light on it. That's where I was trying to go with it, because the body is disgusting. Bodily fluids and biology on the inside of you is nasty. It's blood, it's this, is that. I mean, you can call it beautiful or whatever, but at the same time, it's biological waste and hazard. But also, it's complex combinations and equations that represent you.
right, right, right,
It might not look glamorous to us because we're looking at it through human eyes and human constructs of the world, but on a subatomic quantum level, it is reality.
right, right,
Contradictions become truths when you suppress the senses. Remember, we were talking about that when you're asleep.
right,
So, in order to document your life and many lives and lifetimes, it has to be documented in such a way that would not be readily apparent to us. So, we're gonna call it junk DNA. We're gonna dismiss it as melanin or as something that we can't understand what it is. It's carbon, it's ashes. But no, inside the ashes of that burnt down forest is all the information of the forest, just in a different form.
right,
Just in a different form. It's
right,
all the beauty that was the mountain. It's all the beauty that was the deer and everything, but it then been brought down into a blackening stage. It's still
right,
the same stuff, but now you can reallocate it to where you want it to go.
right.
And that's
And
what we're
look,
doing with our DNA.
a lot of times when it's burnt down, just to say that it's so packed full of information that when it's packed down like that, it's actually all of the information and nutrients to that comes down and starts a new forest because when people have fields at the end of the year, a lot of farmers are burning a field
Mm-hmm.
and then come over with the plow and everything that burns up, that not the ash that blow away, but that black soot, they
Mm-hmm.
ground it back into the ground, they till it back into the earth, and it makes the nutrients more rich. That's why, like, matter of fact, point in case, if you look at the volcanoes, right around the volcano has that black soot, but that's some of the best soil, and nothing grows there because of the heat or whatnot.
I
But
think that's potash. They
but
they people they create
volcano ash,
potash.
right?
Mhm.
Volcano ash is like, you know what I'm saying, nutrient rich.
Yeah, that's like the Harbinger process where you create fertilizer and compost. You have to take what's fermenting and dying. You have to include bacteria and all of these things. So you have to take different aspects. You have to take dark dirt, brown dirt, green dirt. You're going to need nitric acid. You're going to need like urine and feces and all of that to come into there. It's a whole combination of a bunch of stuff, but then that's going to create a biome or ecosystem, you know, and then, you know, all that stuff. So,
like you said, on that level, to that avail, that would be leveraging your life lessons.
Yes, and even if you don't realize it.
Because this is what I'm saying. What is we saying? What did we just say? Oh, I hate getting up. I hate doing this. I hate doing that. But you leveraging that for the end results, right? But the hate for you to get up, the hate for you to be disciplined, the hate for you to be on time, the hate for you to do that's the waste. As far as you're concerned, that's the waste. I don't want to do it. I don't have to do it. I don't need to do it. But that's the waste. That's the byproduct, right? But you want what comes from this byproduct, right?
That's the entropy.
Right. You want the things that come from this system. Right. So, but as far as you concerned, you understand me? Getting up and doing this, that's the fecal matter. That's the things that you don't want. But actually, those things are the most valuable things.
Because they're the foundation.
Right.
They're the foundation.
Right.
The getting up early is the foundation, because if you weren't the person that got up early, you'd just be another person getting out of bed at 12 or whatever.
Right. Rolling
those
over.
are the those are the things that you build the house on.
Right.
That's the fucking what do you call it? That's the bedrock. Right. And bedrock is often forgotten about, but it's so essential, because if you can't rest the full potential of what this house is going to be on the bedrock, or have enough foresight to see that this is going to be the foundation, then you screwed. So you have to have enough foresight to see that, hey, waking up early, even though it sucks, it's not bad, because it's building my foundation. You have to learn that, though, or somebody has to tell you that that's what that's going to be, and you have to accept it for your truth.
Right.
You know, all of these things are learned. You can learn from your mistakes, or like we said earlier, you can learn helplessness. And all of these things are voluntary agreements. Going back to agreements, man, all of these things are voluntary agreements that we agree upon. However small, them bitches can be eternal, karmic. Right. And if it's a form of self-hypnosis, if I'm hypnotizing myself knowingly, that's like a person who's addicted to something. You know, the addiction doesn't take away the reality that you face with that made you turn to the addiction. All the addiction does is pause it for a second. Right. So there's, you know, you're making an agreement. You can't get away from these agreements by pausing it with drinking or drugs or whatever.
But like you're saying, so now when you put it in that sense, let me give it another spin, right? Let me give it another spin. Focusing yourself, focusing your time, because how I was saying it earlier with the ebb and flow of life, and then you being consistent, right? You being consistent, you being disciplined, you being programmed, you doing all of that. Like you said, that's self-hypnosis. Right. Focus is self-hypnotizing. Right. I know the things that'll keep me in line, so I hypnotize myself. Right? Be it however it is, right? Well, I need to. I can't drink because this week I'm trying to bench 305. So I can't. I just got to stay on. I got to stay on. Really, it could be a bigger issue, but that's how I'm hypnotizing myself. You see what I'm saying? Oh well, I want a new car, and I need to save money. So you know what? I'm going to start going to the gym more, because that'll keep me out of the club. That'll keep me out of this. That'll keep me out of there. And then the money that I'll save, I'll spend it on the car. Self-hypnotizing. I'm leveraging that against what I don't want for what I do want. You get what I'm saying? Right. And you can use that, and you can use that in any capacity, right?
If every man and every woman is a star, right? If every person on the planet, on the place is a star, then you feed the flame of that star that we're talking about, this internal flame. You feed that flame through your thoughts and through your mantras, right? Right. Mantras are these repeatable things. So you can feed the flame of this star to make that star shine brighter. So while it's shining, it needs to be shining on the thing that you want to accomplish and the places that you want to go in
Right.
your life. If you're a star, you need to feed the flame of the star that is you with positive thoughts, positive ideation about who you are and where you're trying to go. And
Right.
in that same vein, you're going to shine light because you are the sun, you are the star. You're going to shine light on where you want to go. It's kind of like law of attraction,
Right.
but coming at it from an angle of where you're knowing who you are by realizing the lessons that you've learned in your life. And you're going to use those lessons as logs that you can throw on a fire that's burning inside of you, because that fire is going to illuminate where you're going based on the lessons learned logs that you're throwing on that fire.
Right.
And that fire's got to keep raging until your fire goes out. That's
Right.
why it's life lessons. Life is a continuous combination of phenomena that happen. So you got to keep
Right.
throwing these lesson logs on the fire that's burning within you to illuminate the DNA that is the knowing, because you already know who you are. You already know that you value. You just need to put the value in the proper places.
Right. Right.
So we're going to take the concept of learning life's lessons, and we're going to take the context of these lessons being logs on a fire that's burning within you, because every man and every woman is a star, a burning fire that can illuminate what's in front of you and where you're going. It's going to illuminate upwards, downwards, and outwards from you. You're going to radiate. Right. And in that radiation, like a sun radiates, you're going to radiate. And that radiation is going to cause gravitation, because the opposite of radiation, or to push out, is gravitation, which is to draw in. So your radiation will cause gravitation, just like the sun in our orbit. That's why I said life lessons are like orbits. It might take years for this planet to come back into orbit, to come around your sun. So everything needs to be right and direct when that lesson comes around.
Right.
So you can do what you got to do, man.
Right. So in the meantime, you leverage the values of things that you come across and the things that you come in contact with to stay consistent, for you to stay balanced, for when that ebb and flow or when that rotation come back around, you can be in the, as my man say, time, place, and condition.
The right alignment, man, planetary alignment, because you the sun. And you can have, your solar system is going to be consistent with the solar system we have now, or as vast as you want it to be, because you're the sun.
Right.
And if you're the sun, then whatever you shine upon, if shining and light is information, whatever you shine upon is you casting your information onto that surface.
Right. So
if you want to look at it that way,
if you want to, or if you don't want to, it's all for you. You get what I'm saying? But
yeah,
that's how you leverage it. You get what I'm saying? In your life. You see what I'm saying? We have all of these tools. We have them all there for us and all at our disposal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's like saying everybody got a toolbox.
Everybody got a toolbox.
We all got a task to go do.
Right.
Some dude might pick up a hammer to do everything. You can't pick up a hammer to do everything, bro.
Right. What else?
A hammer is gonna just, you know what I'm saying? You're gonna have to use some of those other tools. But if you don't even know if you don't know the use of the tool, you see the tool, but you're like, man, I don't know what that's used for. I know what this hammer's for, but a hammer can only go so far. You're gonna have to leverage some more of those other tools.
I was telling somebody that one time, and people say, "Oh," I say, "Man, well, you could be a surgeon if you knew what all the tools was for."
Right.
That's what you go to school to learn. Because we put it in such a big context, but I'm just saying it in a small context. People are like, you can't be a surgeon just because you know the tool. Well, I'm saying, once you learn what you learn, that's really what they learn, how and why to use these tools.
That's how you learn to play chess or any game.
Right, exactly.
You just need to know what the pieces do, and then that'll give you a parameter to say, well, this piece can only do this, so then you learn the game.
But people take the possibility away from themselves because they're not leveraging it in those terms. You say, well, if you knew how to use everything, if you knew what the brain was and how the skull was and how to do it, you could do it too.
Yeah, they don't want to give themselves that. That's the knowing. You got to know that you can do anything, man.
Right.
I was telling my lady today, I was like, well, we got a few months left in the year. We could learn a language every month if that's what we wanted to do.
Right.
We can go on the Pilmsra app and learn a language every month if that's what we wanted to do. Because really, when you think about it, the world is at your fingertips. It's really all about what you want to be driven to do, man.
It really
is. And that I mean, it's easier said than done. for sure it's easier said than done, man, because
that's how you leverage life's lessons. If you want to do it right now, you say, okay, well, how can we do it? Now we say, okay, the things that we want to do, now we need to start doing it. Okay, when I get off of work or when I get up, okay, we want to learn a lesson. We want to learn a thing every day. So, okay, for the next month, we're not going to take the X whatever freeway when you come home because that's the longest way. You're not going to do this when you go to work. You're going to eat this. We're going to do this so you can be back home at this time so we can start this at this time. We can do this at this time. We can do this at this time.
Think about that, what you just said. It was so many little nuances to get to the end result. You had to do a little tweak here, a little tweak there. You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of people think lessons got to be big whole things. No, man. Lessons are all the time, every little thing. And lessons are disciplines, man.
Right.
Because lessons discipline you to do that. I'll go back to the definition on them. Don't make me go back.
Right. Right. Go back to it real quick. Hit him.
Yeah, reproof or punishment intended to teach one better ways.
Right.
That's the negative aspect of a lesson. It's a reproof or punishment.
Right.
But you could look at it as a punishment, or you could look at it as just a restriction.
You can look at it as a punishment, or you can look at it as
you could say restriction. Punishment is also a restriction a little bit. It's a synonym.
Hey, it's both. It's an improvement.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I definitely dig it. I definitely did it. I think that's good right there.
Mm-hmm. Right. So look, you know how we do it at this time, man. Hey, stand by your work.
Always on time.
Right on. Appreciate your help.
Thanks for listening. Yeah.